All right, so on part B, first thing I would need to know or need to do on this is what? Factor. I need to factor that denominator. So I'm going to come off to the side and factor that guy. Needs to multiply to give me -10 and add to give me -3. -5 and a +2. So up in the numerator we have x minus 2. Down in the denominator we have x minus 5 and x plus 2. I want to know where that is greater than or equal to 0. So we are looking for, where is this positive? And we're going to include 0 on that one. So 2 questions here. What values make my factors 0? So what are those values that would make my factors 0? 5 and plus and minus 2. Yes. So I have 5, -2, +2. What can x not equal? 5 and -2. So I would have to have parentheses with those pieces regardless of the or equal to, because it cannot be equal to those values. But we can include this +2. So we have to make sure that we're using a bracket with that one. All right, I'm going to make my sign chart. My number line first. So I have -2, +2, and 5. Remember, I want this to go in numerical order from smallest to largest. This is a number line here. And then I'm going to put my factors. I need x minus 2, x minus 5, x plus 2, and then I need a row for the result. All right. And then it's just a matter of determining what is positive or negative and where that's happening at. If I pick a value over here, give me a test value that's smaller than -2. -3. What happens when I put that into the first factor? It's negative. What about when I put it into x minus 5? Negative. X plus 2? Remember, you told me test value of -3. It's going to be negative. Sorry, I heard both words, and it could just be my hearing. If I multiply 3 negative numbers together, I get a negative result. Give me a nice, easy test value in between -2 and +2. 0. All right, so if I put 0 in here, 0 minus 2, negative. 0 minus 5, 0 plus 2. Positive. I multiply 2 negatives and a positive together, I'm going to get a positive result. Give me a test value in between 2 and 5. 3. 3 minus 2, positive. 3 minus 5, negative. 3 plus 2, positive. Multiply 2 positives and a negative together for a negative result. And last column, test value bigger than 5. What's going to be true all the way down? They're all going to be positives for a positive result here. All right, I'm going to kind of scoot this around so that I have room for everything here. Which things do we have to remember to include? Just the +2. So right here, and we wanted positive or negative results? Positive results. We want to know where it's greater than or equal to 0. So I want this interval here and this interval over here. So from -2 to +2 with a bracket around my +2. Any values in there would make my rational a positive. Union what?
5 to infinity.
Yep, 5 to infinity. 5 inside parentheses because it's in my denominator, and so I cannot have an or equal to when I'm dealing with 0 if it is a factor down in my denominator. Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. Is 0 also included in where? I'm sorry. Positive and I right here. Oh, right here. I want to know, yeah, so that's the I is that or equal to part. Yep. That's what I'm using for I to mean is because we've got this or equal to here, so I have to make sure I know which ones they can be equal to. Yep. Good questions. Talk to me about this one. What are the factors that make, or sorry, what values make my factor 0? Yep. Sorry, what values of x? I'm not speaking right today. What values of x make the factors 0? +3. -3, anything else? 0. Do we need to worry about including any of these? No. I don't have this or equal to here. It has to be strictly positive. Positive. We will not have any brackets here because there's no or equal to there. All right. And while I didn't write it down, we went ahead and factored this like this. This is how we came up with the positive and -3 here. And then that. All right, so it's time for a sign chart then. -3, 0, +3. Get my factors, -3x. X plus 3, x minus 3, and result. All right. Test value that is less than -3. -4. If I substitute -4 in right here, I get what kind of result? Positive. -4, negative, and negative. For an overall result, that would be what?
Positive.
Positive. In between -3 and 0. -1. I put -1 in here.
Positive.
I get a positive. -1. Positive. -1. Negative. For an overall result, that would be negative. In between 0 and 3. 1. So I substitute it in here. I get a negative value. 1 plus 3. Positive. 1 minus 3. Negative. Overall result. Positive. And last but not least, a test value that's bigger than 3. What will that do here? It's going to be a negative result here. 4 plus 3. Positive. 4 minus 3. Positive for an overall result that is negative. A lot of times we're going to see this pattern of alternating positives and negatives. Please keep in mind, though, we did see one last week where that was not the case. We had negative, negative, positive, positive. So don't just assume. You actually do have to go in and test these to see whether it's going to alternate or whether it's going to stay consistent. All right, so what are my intervals here then? -infinity to -3, parentheses, union, and then 0 to 3. Okay, thank you. What questions do you guys have before I put the next couple examples up? So far, so good? All right. What about if I don't have a 0, like in example B? We need to get it set equal to 0. So the first thing I'm going to need to do here is to subtract 2 from both sides. So I have x plus 1 over 2x minus 3 minus 2 is greater than 0. What do I do with it from there now? Yes, I need a common denominator, so I'm going to put this over 1, and then I'm going to multiply by 2x minus 3. So I have x plus 1 minus 2 times 2x minus 3 all over 2x minus 3 is greater than 0. I'm going to need to distribute here now. So x plus 1 minus 4x plus 6 over 2x minus 3 is greater than 0. And then I'll combine my like terms together. So I get negative 3x plus 7 over 2x minus 3 is greater than 0. So what values make my factors 0? Yes. I have a positive 7 over 3 and a positive 3 over 2. Which one is smaller? 3 over 2. So when I'm making my number line, I need to see the 3 over 2 first, and then the 7 over 3. Why are they both positive? A lot of times students will look at this, though, and they'll say, well, it's got a plus in the first one, so it should be negative 7/3.
That is negative 3.
Because you're dividing by a negative 3 then. So just having a plus sign in between isn't enough to mean that your 0 is a negative. I know it feels like a silly question sometimes, but I'm still going to ask. All right, so I have 3 over 2 and 7 over 3. I'm going to write that up above, actually, I think. Give myself some more room. We only have 2 factors this time. We have x plus 1. We have 2x minus 3. And then I need my results.
Shouldn't we use 3x plus negative?
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you for correcting me on that. I was looking up at the original problem, and I should have been looking after we had set it equal to 0. Or not equal to 0, but greater than 0. Thank you for correcting me. Negative 3x plus 7. All right. Something smaller than 3 over 2. 1. So if I substitute 1 in right here, I have negative 3x plus 7. That's a positive. What about if I substitute in 1 here? Negative for a final result that would be? Negative. In between 3 over 2 and 7 over 3. Well, 3 over 2 is 1.5. 7 over 3 is a little bit bigger than 2, and I want something in between there. 2 sounds good. So negative 3 times 2 plus 7, positive. 2 times 2 minus 3, positive, for an overall result that would be positive. Last interval to test, something bigger than 7 over 3. 3. Negative 3 times 3 plus 7. Negative, it's going to be a negative 2 there, right? If I take 3 and substitute it in here, 2 times 3 minus 3, positive, for an overall negative result. Did I want to know where these were going to be positive or negative? Positive. We wanted to know where it was going to be greater than 0. There's only one interval that satisfies that. Yes, parentheses or brackets? Parentheses. Why parentheses? There's no or equal to, so I can't have any included values. So 3 over 2, comma, 7 over 3. I want you guys to give part E a try. Try that one on your own. We'll check back in here in about, I'll give you about 3-4 minutes to do that one. What values make my factors 0? -3, +3, and 0. What can x not equal? Just 0. Because that's the only piece that we have in our denominator that we have to worry about there. Because I have x plus 3, x minus 3 in my numerator. We have x cubed in the denominator, and we want to know where that is positive and which values we're going to include. So we're going to include positive and -3. We will not include 0. So I'm going to make my number line to make my sign chart. -3, 0, +3. Get my factors up here. X plus 3, x minus 3, x cubed. My overall result. Give me a test value that is smaller than -3. -4. -4 plus 3. Negative. -4 minus 3. Negative. If I take a negative number and I cube it, it's going to be a negative. When I multiply 3 negatives together, I'm going to get a negative. In between 0 and -3. -1. -1 plus 3. Positive. -1 minus 3. Negative. If I take a negative number and I cube it, I still get a negative. For an overall result, multiply a positive and 2 negatives together, so that's going to be a positive. In between 0 and 3. 1. 1 plus 3. Positive. 1 minus 3. Negative. 1 cubed. Positive. Multiply 2 positives and a negative for an overall negative result. Something bigger than 3. 4. What's going to happen all the way down? All positives. 4 plus 3 is positive. 4 minus 3 is positive. 4 cubed is positive. Get a positive result from the whole thing. Did I want positives or negatives? Positives. Anybody included? -3 and 3. So I want these two intervals, and I know I need a bracket if I see the I. That's why I put those I's down underneath, because I'm going to read across the bottom. The intervals that I want, I circle. And if it starts with an I, then I start my interval notation with a bracket. So I have a bracket, -3 to 0, union, what? Bracket 3 to infinity. Nice work. Nice work. All right. Let's look at the next one. What would I need to do to this first? Yes, I need to subtract that 2 over x plus 1 so that I have a 0 on one side. It doesn't matter which side of the inequality you get the 0 on, but you have to have a 0 on one side of your inequality. So I'm going to subtract 2 over x plus 1 from both sides. So I have 4 over 3x minus 2 minus 2 over x plus 1 is less than or equal to 0. We're going to need to get a common denominator. What will our common denominator be? X plus 1, 3x minus 2. So I'm going to multiply this first rational, top and bottom, by x plus 1. And my second rational by 3x minus 2. So that I have 4 times x minus 1 minus 2 times 3x minus 2 all over that common denominator. And I want to know where that is less than or equal to 0. I'm going to need to distribute up in my numerator. And then I'm going to need to combine my like terms together. 4x minus 4 minus 6x plus 4. What nice thing just happened for us there? The 4's are going to cancel out. So I have 4x minus 6x, which gives me what up in my numerator? Negative 2x over 3x minus 2 times x plus 1. Where is that less than or equal to 0? So I want negative intervals and included. What values make my factors 0? 0, negative 1, and a positive 2/3. What can x not equal? I'm sorry, one more time. Negative 1 and 2/3. So this would be the only value that gets included for that or equal to part. Make my sign chart with my number line. Mm-hmm. You're right, that should be plus, what did I do wrong? 4 times x plus 1. Yes, I'm sorry, you are totally correct. I wrote that wrong. Guys, what Marvion just pointed out to me was that I wrote this wrong right here. I wrote x plus 1 up above, but then I wrote an x minus 1 down below that, so that was my mistake. So when I distribute that, that's going to make this a plus, which means it doesn't actually cancel. Thank you for catching that. So that means up in my numerator, instead of negative 2x, I have what? Negative 2x plus 8, which means my zeros, still that negative 1 and positive 2/3. What's the other value? 4. And I apologize for that. Thank you so much for catching that. All right, so we've got negative 1, positive 2/3, positive 4. This is my included value. Negative 2x plus 8. Technically, I could factor a negative 2 out of there as a GCF, but do I need to? No. 3x minus 2, x plus 1, and then my overall result. Go ahead and finish this one up on your own, and then we will talk about that interval. I'm going to give you guys about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Talk me through these columns. What are we going to have here? Starting at the top. Positive. Here. Negative. Here. Negative. Giving me a positive result. What about this second column? Positive. Negative. Positive. For an overall negative result. Third column. Have a positive here. Positive. Positive. For an overall positive result. And very last column. Negative. Positive. Positive for an overall negative result. My 4 is included. And did I want positives or negatives? I wanted negatives right here. So what are my intervals? -1 to 2/3 union, bracket from 4 to infinity. All right. Last couple problems coming up. Everything that we have left to finish up is going to be on this last screen. All right. One side of my inequality has to be a what? Has to be a 0. So I'm going to start here by adding 36 to both sides. So I would have x to the 4th plus 13x squared plus 36 is greater than or equal to 0. What did you say? We can do u substitution here, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to let u equal x squared. So I would have u squared plus 13u plus 36 is greater than or equal to 0. Will that factor for us? Multiplies to 36, adds to 13. I'm sorry, what did you say again? Positive 9 and positive 4. I heard the positive 4 and my brain just forgot the first thing that you said. I apologize. So I have u plus 9, u plus 4 is greater than or equal to 0. I'm going to substitute that x back in. So we had x squared was equal to u. So I have x squared plus 9, x squared plus 4 is greater than or equal to 0. If I take a real number and I square it, what's going to happen every time? It's going to be a positive. So is there any possible way that this would come out to be a negative? No. This is positive for all real x's. What about this guy right here? Same thing. I'm taking a value and squaring it, and then I'm adding something to it. So this is also going to be positive for all real x's. Is there any value for x that we could substitute in here that would give us a negative?
No.
So what's my interval that would make this, it's not a quadratic, it's a quartic, a 4th power polynomial. What's my interval for where this is greater than or equal to 0? Negative infinity to positive infinity. All real numbers. Looking back just when we got 0 on the right-hand side, looking back here, without even doing my u substitution, we could have gotten to that as well. If I take something to the 4th power, it has to be what type of number? Positive. If I take something and I square it, positive. And here I'm only adding things together. If I was subtracting, then I might need to be really careful there. But here I'm only adding values. So it's only going to continue to increase. It's not going to get smaller than 0. How should we approach B? Let's factor this guy. Let's use some grouping here since we have a cubic. So I'm going to make my first group here and my second group here. What can I take out of the first group? X squared, and that would leave me with x plus 2. What can I take out of the second group? Negative 4. I can take out a negative 2, but it's not the biggest. And that would leave me with x plus 2. It's greater than or equal to 0. So I have x squared minus 4 and x plus 2. Is that fully factored? No. Factor this guy further. X plus 2, x minus 2, and then we have another x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 0. So I know my zeros to get my sign chart. Is there anything that x cannot be?
No.
Nope. So everything will be included here. I have a negative 2 and a positive 2. Both of these get included. When I write down my factors, though, I'm going to have x plus 2 on here twice because I have 2 factors on there that are x plus 2. That's what we call a double root. On a graph, if you guys remember from Algebra 2, when we have a double root, that's where our graph would come down and touch the x-axis at that 0, but it wouldn't go all the way through it. It's going to kind of come back up off of it. It's bouncing off of it. Something less than negative 2. Negative 3, what's going to happen all the way down? They're all going to be negatives, giving me an overall negative result. What about if I choose something in between positive 2 and negative 2? Like a 0, so it's going to be positive, negative, positive. Once again, giving me an overall negative result. It didn't alternate signs for me here. You said 3 is bigger than 2 because I need that last interval. That's going to be positives all the way down, giving me an overall positive result. Was I interested in the positive intervals or the negative intervals? Positive intervals. So I just want this guy, but what do I do about this? Yeah, it needs a curly bracket. This is because of that or equal to. So negative 2 would make this or equal to 0. And then anything from 2 to infinity would also make this greater than or equal to 0. Last one. I'm going to subtract x from both sides so that I have x cubed minus x is greater than 0. Can I take anything out of that?
X.
I can take an x out. So this is going to be x and then x squared minus 1. Does anything factor more? X squared minus 1 factors more. So I have x times x plus 1 times x minus 1 is greater than 0. Do we have the or equal to? Good observation there. We do not have the or equal to, so I don't have to worry about including any of these. So I have negative 1, I have 0, I have positive 1. All right, something smaller than negative 1, negative 2. That's going to make this a negative, this a negative, this a negative. If I substitute negative 2 in there for an overall negative result. In between negative 1 and 0, negative 0.5. That'll make this negative. This will be positive. This one would be negative for an overall positive result. Something bigger than 0 but less than 1. Yep, so like 1/2. That's going to be positive. That's going to be positive. This one would be negative for an overall negative result. And anything bigger than 1 is going to be positives all the way down. Did we want the positive or negative intervals? Positive intervals. We have 2 intervals that are positive. Yes, -1 to 0 and yes, 1 to positive infinity. Nice work. That finishes up 2.7 entirely. I was hoping we have a little bit of time at the end of class today, but we ended up not having that. Tomorrow, you guys have a work day. This would be the perfect time to ask questions about the review, ask questions about homework assignments. I'm going to give you guys the day to work. And then on Thursday, I will go over any problems that you guys want to see me work through. Okay? I'll do it kind of more class-led at that point.